All right, we're factoring quadratic trinomials part 2. So as we're going to talk about here, I'm going to be discussing factoring by grouping. So we're talking about ax squared plus bx plus c. Last video, a was 1, so it was just an x squared plus bx plus c. But we're going to use factoring by grouping. There are plenty of other ways that you can factor these, but this is the method I'll be using. So if you're using your own method, whatever you used in previous classes, that's completely fine. So here we go. So we have a number of different steps to do this, but it is going to eventually involve factoring with GCF. So a couple things here. I'm going to have two categories again. So what is it going to multiply to? What is it going to add to? Now multiplying is not just going to be the C value. It's going to be A times C. So here, I'm going to multiply those together. So in this case, that's 6 times -4. So I get -24. So it's going to multiply that. It is still going to add up to my B term of 5. So I have to find out what's going to multiply to this, but it's going to add to that. So again, if you want to write all these factors out, sometimes people just know it. So -1, 24, 1, -24. That doesn't work because neither of those do. -2 and 12, 2 and -12. Okay, that doesn't do it either. So I've got -4 times 6, 4 times -6. That doesn't add up to 5. And then I've got 8 and 3, -8 and 3, 8 and -3. So you can kind of list up, end up the last factors that we thought of. Those are the ones that help us out. This is the one we need here because these are going to add to a -5. Once you find your factors, you don't have to keep listing all of them, but sometimes it does help. So once I have that, this A value, this A term, that's going to stay here. This -4, that's going to stay here. And these two terms right here, I'm going to put right in the middle. I'm going to split up my middle term. Now, it doesn't matter which one you put first, the 8 or the -3. I suggest you put the negative term if you have the option. But I'm going to put an x here and then an 8x here. What you're then going to do, and so nothing, I haven't changed anything. I've rewritten this. I've rewritten that -4, and I've changed 5x, so it's a -3x plus 8x, which is still that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the GCF of this and then the GCF of these two terms. So the 6 and the 3, there's a 3 in common, and they also share an x. So to find out this, I'm taking 6 divided by 3, that's 2. And then x squared, take away an x, that's an x. Here, -3 divided by 3 is a -1. And if I have one x and I take an x away, it's gone. So it just leaves me this. Now, this third term, that sign is extremely important. You're going to bring that down. So I bring that down and then do the same thing with these terms. 8, 4, the biggest number is just 4. They don't share an x. So if I have 8x divided by 4, that's 2x. So 2x. And then -4 divided by 4, that's a -1. Space here. So in this case, if you notice, I have the exact same thing in the parentheses, and that's what you have to have. So to find your final answer after you've done that, you're basically GCF adding a 2x. So both of these share a 2x minus 1. So that's going to go in one parentheses. The second parentheses is what comes out front. So this was a 3x here, so that's going to go there. And then I have a 4 here. That's going to go here. So I put that in front. And it doesn't matter if you put the 3x plus 4 first and the 2x minus 1 second. Doesn't matter. Also, if I would have reversed the order for these guys, if I would have put the 8x here and the minus 3x here, I would have gotten the exact same answer, but it would have looked differently with what I had in the parentheses, but it would have matched up. So it honestly doesn't matter. I would suggest you put the negative in front if you have that option. We'll eventually talk about if they're both negative, what do we do? Next problem here, I'm looking. Another thing to mention too is if it has a GCF, try to factor that out first to make the problem simpler. In this case, I don't have that. So we're going to multiply it. It's going to be 5 times -10. So again, that's your A value times your C value. So that gives me a -50. And then it's going to add to -23. And so same thing. If you want to write those out, you might just find out what it is. And you could guess, well, I think it has to be -2 and 25, or 2 and -25. So I don't have to write all of them. And so it ends up that these guys add up to those -23, whereas these add up to a +23. So same thing. Put the 5x squared first. This middle term is going to split off into two numbers. It doesn't matter which way I go. If I want to put the 2 first, so I'll put plus 2x and then minus 25x and then minus 10. Like I said, typically I suggest people put the negative term in front if they have an option, but it doesn't matter. And then we'll do GCF and then do GCF. So if I look at this 5x squared and the 2, 5 and 2 have nothing in common besides a 1, but they do share an x. So my GCF there is a 1x or simply just x. And then if I have 5x squared and I take away an x, that's just going to leave me 5x. 2x, take away the x, will just leave me a 2. Now, last example, I mentioned that whatever this sign is, that has to drop down. So this is a minus sign, so I'm going to bring that down. That'll be really important. Then the 25 and the 10, both of those share a 5. So I'm going to GCF out a -5, which means I'm dividing by a negative. So this -25 divided by that -5 is going to give me a positive 5x. And then -10 divided by -5 will give me a positive 2. And if you look up, it does match up with these parentheses. That means I'm doing it right. So I'll put the number in the parentheses in 1. And then my leftover number is this x. And then this one here, that -5. As you can see, these are a little bit longer with this factoring by grouping. One more. On this one, if I look here, I have a GCF that I can factor out. All these are divisible by 2, so I can GCF out of 2. I take 8 divided by 2, that'll give me a 4x squared. And then take this -26 divided by 2, that'll give me -13x. And then 6 divided by 2, that'll give me a +3. So now I'm just going to worry about this. I'm just going to worry about what's in the parentheses here. So when I say, what does it multiply to? It's going to be 4 times 3. So it's going to multiply to 12. It's going to add to a -13. So some people are like, okay, well, what about 1 and 12? That adds up to a +13. But if I do -1 and a -12, that's the one I'm looking for. So this 2 right here, that'll just drop down. And then this 4x squared will stay the same. This -13, I'm going to break it down between these two numbers. So again, it doesn't matter the order. Both of them are negative, so it really doesn't matter here. And as we've been doing, GCF these two, GCF these two. So 2 goes here. Now in this case, the only thing that these two have in common is a 1 and an x. So I'm just going to factor out an x. So 4x squared divided by x, that's just 4x. -1, x divided by that will just give me a -1. Reminder, this third term in the parentheses here, that minus, I'm going to automatically break down. And then 12 and 3, both of those share a 3. So I'm going to GCF out of 3. So -12x divided by a -3, negative divided by negative is a positive, so that's 4x. And then 3 divided by -3 is a -1. And as you can see on that, I do have the exact same in the parentheses. So this 2 just going to drop down. And then this factorization, 4x minus 1 will go in 1. And then this x and -3 will go in the other. So always look for a GCF first. It'll make your life a lot easier.